It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
These are the final seconds.
The lead in the fourth. Can they hold on to it?
That do or die time. And everything rides on one shot. But it isn't going to be that easy.
And it's a one-point game.
This is down to the wire.
They're going to try the three-pointer attempt.
One shot to take you to the top. One winner. This is clutch basketball. That's the NBA playoffs. That's game.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into a Wednesday edition of the Locked On Utes podcast. Plenty to get to here on a hump day. Brian, what are we going to talk about?
Well, Jake, we're going to talk about a lot of different things. We're going to talk about some Utah basketball. What a surprise.
Shocking.
There's never anything going on with Utah basketball. Riley Batten coming back to the U? Question mark? No. Exclamation point. Riley Batten withdrawing his name from the transfer portal. What kind of an impact is that going to have on the program? Why is it important that Craig Smith secured Batten? And what do they need to do in terms of maybe getting some of the other guys back? We'll also talk about the departure of Andy Hill, officially announcing that he was leaving the University of Utah and announcing his next destination on Twitter. And then we're going to talk about the Pac-12.
Yeah.
The Conference of Champions.
Bill Walton's fever dream not necessarily coming true, but it sounds like they are narrowing in on a potential short list of candidates to be the new commissioner of the conference. We'll examine that ahead on today's show as well. So without further ado, let's get into it. This is the Locked On Utes podcast for March 31st, 2021. Once again, this is the Locked On Utes podcast. My name is Jake Hatch. That is Brian Brown, the brown bear in the chair himself. Of course, he is the brains behind this operation. I just happen to be along kind of steering the ship. But we have a lot of fun anyways, talking all things Utah Utes every single day.
Jake steer good. Jake big help.
Nice, I like that. Well done. But plenty to get to ahead on today's show. But before we do that, though, Brian, a reminder for everybody, please leave us a rating and review. We want those 5-star ratings on Apple Podcasts. You guys can leave whatever you want in the comments, whatever it might be. And we're going to actually do a better job. I'm endeavoring to do this. Obviously, we're going to have a new month starting tomorrow. In the month of April, we're going to do a better job at highlighting those who left us ratings and reviews. We'll make sure to give you guys a shout out on social media as well as here on the podcast. So please leave us those ratings and reviews. Love your guys' support. We've seen absolutely massive growth over the past month, and a lot of it has to do with the coaching change with the Runnin' Utes men's basketball program. But nonetheless, having a blast. And let's start there, Brian. Two, I think, rather significant pieces of news involving the Runnin' Utes. Which one should we start with, Riley Batten or Andy Hill?
I think it's got to be Riley Batten because he's the one that's the most important going forward to the Utes. And Batten announced on Twitter in kind of a funny fashion, I guess. There was a little bit of confusion if he had officially withdrawn his name from the portal. But he basically posted a video of his highlights and said, let's run it back, Utes.
Yeah.
And most of us assumed, you were able to confirm through a very confidential source, that he had indeed withdrawn his name from the portal and that he would be returning to the University of Utah. And I think it's a really strong first step for Craig Smith.
Yeah, I think it is, and it's a recruiting win. And I know that it's not Timmy Allen, it's not Alfonso Plummer. I get that, but to get a guy of Riley Batten's caliber, because at the bare minimum, in my opinion, Riley Batten is a quality backup for you on this squad at minimum, and it signals that he believes that Craig Smith has got this program in a good direction despite being on the job less than a week, and feels like, hey, I actually fit in with this, I believe in this, and I want to, like he said, I want to run it back with the Utes. So I think this is actually a very good thing that should be trumpeted by the Utah basketball program with regards to saying, you know what? Yeah, we understand that our reputation as a bunch of guys leave here. Well, guess what? We got one back already.
Exactly, and it does beg the question of who else might Craig Smith try to recruit back from the portal. Alfonso Plummer definitely putting his foot, I should say, into the NBA waters, dipping his toe, probably the more popular nomenclature.
Sure.
Timmy Allen, looking around, it does sound like he does want to go closer to home and possibly play with his brother, who is transferring from Nebraska. So remains to be seen what will happen with that. Maybe Craig Smith goes after those two. Lahat Chun, Jordan Kellier also in the portal still. Again, remains to be seen what will happen with those. But I think the other part of it, too, is that Craig Smith is going to be very active in whatever quality he needs to be in order to get people to come play basketball at Utah.
One thing to note about Craig Smith, and this is something that Scott Gerard actually brought up, and he's the Utah State play-by-play voice, happens to both be Brian and I's boss at the Zone Sports Network, but he mentioned this with PK yesterday on DJ and PK in the morning, talking about Craig Smith. He brought in John Smith III. Many of you might remember him. Obviously, was a fantastic player. John Knight III, John Knight III at Utah State. Was a good player for the Aggies, and then suddenly transferred, ended up at Southern Utah, and led the Thunderbirds in scoring this past year. Well, this was a guy that Craig Smith brought in and realized that, you know what, he's a good player, but he doesn't fit with the culture of what I'm building here, so he cut him loose and let him find a new program. Craig Smith is going to be very smart about how he goes about building his roster. He wants guys who, quote-unquote, fit what he wants to build culture-wise in his program, and he's not going to cut corners with that regard, and I think that's actually a positive sign. This is not a guy who's going to just jump into the portal and chase every single big name that's in there. He's going to make sure that he's strategic about who he targets and who he brings in, and the hope is that, yes, as they put this roster back together, they start to gel, and it hopefully yields, a sum that's more than the total of the parts, if that makes sense.
It does, and I think it speaks very highly to what he thinks about Riley Batten already, and things that we know about Batten. He is a high culture guy. He is a hard worker. He is a guy that has improved, on the defensive side of the court, absolutely, in his time at the University of Utah, and perhaps a change in management, so to speak, will help him to kind of just rediscover his game. He was billed as an excellent outside shooter. We've seen it at times from him. If he could be a consistent stretch 4, stretch 5 kind of guy, and I hesitate to even say stretch 5 because I am in firm state of mind that he's not a 5, at least not in the Pac-12 anyways. But it's good to have him back, and I think what it does is it also gives you a good opportunity of making sure guys who are still in the program maybe stay in the program.
Yeah, and that's the positive. So I think that's actually a very good thing to see, that a guy like Riley Batten is already saying, you know what, I like the hire here. I'm all in with this. Let's go and get to work. And I think that's a positive sign. We're a little bit long on this first part of the podcast, Brian, so let's talk about Andy Hill here in just a moment. Obviously, like you mentioned in the open, announcing that he's leaving the University of Utah after a decade plus up on the Hill, but almost immediately announcing his next stop. We'll examine that here momentarily, but let's take a minute, Brian, and talk about our good friends over at Built Bar. We've been talking about them ad nauseum every single day. I know you guys are probably wondering, okay, these guys talk about this so much, but Brian and I wholeheartedly believe and absolutely enjoy these protein bars. They're covered in 100% chocolate, and they are absolutely phenomenal.
It's dessert, Jake, and it's healthy dessert. And if there's such a thing as a healthy dessert, then Built Bar definitely fits the bill for that. It's a great way to bridge the gap between your second lunch or third lunch or fourth lunch, if you're like me, and you just kind of snack throughout the day. Built Bar gets it done without having to continue to go back to the cupboard for whatever's there. My favorite flavor, without a doubt, coconut brownie chunk. It's a special flavor. They've released a couple new ones lately that you and I have been able to try, and ooh, buddy, I'm excited for those ones to drop too.
Yeah, they're continuing to do a great job, and they're trying to determine who is the best of all the Built Bars. It's Built Bar Madness, and Brian, you mentioned it, coconut brownie chunk. It is in the flavorful 4 of a matchup with mint brownie. I think this is a pretty phenomenal matchup, but I have said all along that coconut brownie chunk is the Gonzaga in this bracket. They're the heavy favorite in my mind, and they should advance to the championship. But you guys can have your voice heard by voting on BuiltBar.com every single day. Also, you can follow them on Twitter at bar_built if you want to weigh in there. And remember, while you're at BuiltBar.com, use that promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off your next order. That's LOCKED1515 to get 15% off your next order, guys. Take advantage of it now. Brian and I love these protein bars. We believe that you guys will too. Get that 15% off with the promo code LOCKED15 at BuiltBar.com.
Yeah, you're making sports bets, but are you making winning sports bets? To win consistently, you need an edge, research, analytics. It's a lot. Or you could let BetQL do the work for you. Every game, every potential bet, from winners and losers to all the sides and totals, line movement, player props, and more, all backed by BetQL's proven data and analytics. BetQL analyzes over 350,000 unique bets every year and rates each potential bet on a scale of 1 to 5 stars. A 5-star is definitely a smart bet. 1 star, smart money is staying away. BetQL even lets you sort all of today's games with the best options listed right there at the top of your screen. BetQL gives you access to the same information the pros use, the stuff the sportsbooks don't want you to see. It's time to bet smarter and beat the books with BetQL. Visit BetQL.com today and use promo code PODCAST for 20% off. That's 20% off with promo code PODCAST at BetQL.com.
Folks, get all the sports news you need to know about in under 20 minutes with the Locked On Today podcast. Host Peter Bukowski updates you with the latest news in every major sport with the help of our local experts. Follow Locked On Today, the podcast, on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, as we mentioned, want to talk a little bit about Andy Hill. Obviously had a nice long run. I believe it was actually a full decade up on the Hill with the University of Utah men's basketball program, announcing yesterday that he is leaving Utah. And I'm not going to lie, I'm going to miss seeing Andy Hill at Utah.
Yeah, he was Larry Kraskowiak's right-hand man, came with him from Montana. Just a guy that really embraced the University of Utah as his own, really bled sort of red and white, crimson and white, if you want to say it like that.
No.
Crimson, I guess, is nobody bleeds white. What am I saying? I mean, everybody technically bleeds red, but that's
sure
the point here. Just a guy that really gave it his all and worked really hard for the University of Utah, brought his family here, ingrained themselves in the community. And this is the nature of that business, is that you see good people have to make changes all the time. And we wish him good luck and plenty of success at his next destination, which it sounds like he announced on Twitter not too long after announcing that he was leaving the University of Utah.
Yeah, so he's actually headed to Albuquerque. He is going to join Richard Pitino's staff, it appears, with the University of New Mexico, the Lobos down there. A pretty big rebuilding job to be undertaken there by Pitino. Obviously, Pitino was he was a free agent or a fired coach for all of it felt like 15 minutes. Well, Andy Hill didn't spend a lot of time on the market either, and he's headed to New Mexico. I think Andy's association and knowledge of the Intermountain West, because like you said, he came from Montana to Utah. Well, guess what? New Mexico needs to mine talent out of this region of the country. Obviously, they're going to try and spread their wings and recruit more nationally as well. But I think Andy will be a welcome addition to the staff down there in New Mexico. And I would imagine that he is going to be a guy that University of New Mexico fans are going to come to know and love, just like Utah fans, I think, associate themselves with Andy Hill.
Without a doubt. And I think he gives Richard Pitino a presence from the Mountain West, a guy who's come from the Midwest. And while he does carry a lot of cachet with the last name, this business is still about relationships, Jake. And Andy Hill has those in spades. And so I think he'll take those and his coaching ability and all of that to New Mexico, and hopefully they have a lot of success there, or maybe Andy does. Who knows? I'm not sure what your feelings on Richard Pitino are. I'm kind of, no real feelings one way or another. But
the Pitino family is just They're a dynasty. There's no doubt about that. Of course, Rick, everybody knows his story. A guy who wins at an extremely high clip, but also brings controversy with him wherever he goes. I will give Richard Pitino credit. Hasn't necessarily had as much controversy surrounding him, but also hasn't won at the same level as his father. So, yeah, I'm with you. I don't necessarily have a feeling one way or the other on Richard Pitino, but you wish him well and hope that a guy like Andy Hill can go in there and help out. One thing that I think Hill is absolutely going to help out with is he was responsible for recruiting at the University of Utah. So he knows this region, he knows how to recruit, knows how to go international and find guys, obviously, with what Utah did. This is going to be a guy that I think you're going to see Richard Pitino lean on heavily to get things going right away down there in Albuquerque.
Yeah, and they're going to need him because Kenny Thomas isn't walking through that door. Tony Snell is not walking through that door.
Snell, yeah. There's been some, like, if you think back, there were some absolutely legendary teams coming out of that University of New Mexico program there for a little bit, but they have fallen on hard times ever since Steve Alford left for UCLA, a week after signing that quote-unquote 10-year deal with New Mexico. It's been a tough go down there in Albuquerque, but yeah, I wish Andy Hill nothing but the best. He gave 10 great years to the University of Utah, accomplished a lot of good things alongside Larry Kryskowiak, and you hope that he can find success in his next stop down there in is it the land of enchantment? Is that what we call New Mexico? Is that the state motto or whatever state nickname?
It's not exactly the motto that I heard while watching Breaking Bad, but sure, why not?
Fair enough, Breaking Bad. Okay, yeah, we'll just leave that there. But nonetheless, we wanted to wish Andy Hill well and hope that he finds success, because I absolutely believe that this is going to be a good hire for Richard Pitino and the University of New Mexico, and we'll be looking forward to seeing how Coach Hill does down there. Brian, before we move on to a Pac-12-centric topic here, is there anything else with regards to the running Utes that we need to touch on today that our listeners should know about?
If in case you missed yesterday's episode, it does sound like DeMarlo Slocum will be joining the coaching staff there at the University of Utah. There's been nothing official confirming that, but the rumor mill is churning pretty strongly in that direction. It was the Review Journal. I can't think of who it was. Sam
Gordon.
Think of his last name.
Sam
Gordon
from the Las Vegas Review Journal.
Yeah, broke the news the other night. There are also very strong indications that Eric Peterson will be joining Coach Craig Smith at the University of Utah. But along those lines, we're waiting to find out about that third chair, and it does sound promising for some running Utes that maybe were on the bubble. You know, I've talked a lot about how Ryland Jones is one that's kind of in the crosshairs there.
Sure. That
there may be some ground that had been made up with that one. But this is not – Riley Batten's not going to be the last move, I think, at the University of Utah. We'll just put it that way.
I would agree. And funny enough, I just wanted to pass this along. Eric Peterson is Andy Hill to Larry Kryskowiak in terms of Eric Peterson to Craig Smith. Chris Smith is a former BYU football player. Anyways, but nonetheless, I think this is actually going to be an interesting staff to see how it rounds out, and I'm with you. I think that this is going to be interesting to see how they go about building this roster, but I can guarantee you this. They're going to build a roster. Craig Smith has proven it, that he can find guys in quick order and put them together and have success, and you hope that he takes over Utah and gets them rolling right away. All right, coming up here in just a minute, we're going to talk a little bit about the Pac-12 commissioner search. Dennis Staub put out an interesting tweet a few days ago talking about some of the guys on the short list, some of the finalists or the candidates for the position, and there's some big names in there, and we'll talk about all that here in just a moment. Today's show is brought to you by our good friends at Bet Online. Folks, they are the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your sports action. Brian and I have we dove on in, and we've been having a lot of fun with this, Brian. I know you've been doing these parlays and having some fun with it. Everything's still going good on that front?
Yeah, Jake, it's fun. This is the time of year where you can really have some good times with prop bets.
Sure, yeah.
There on NCAA, and that's really where I've found some fun success. And we take the wins and we take the losses in stride, because that's what it's all about, right? Is growing and having fun throughout the process. No, it's not. It's about making money. That's what it's about.
Depends on what your motivation is. I can tell you that much. By the way, opening day for Major League Baseball is tomorrow. So if you've got a futures bet, like you think one team is going to get a lot of wins that maybe is getting undervalued by BetOnline, make sure you get that bet in right away. You can do it. You can sign up for free at betonline.ag now. And also, when you make your first deposit, you can use the promo code LOCKEDON for a 50% welcome bonus. You heard that right. Free money from our friends at BetOnline. So take advantage of that now. Use your web browser or your mobile device to sign up for betonline.ag. And once again, use that promo code LOCKEDON for your 50% welcome bonus. It's all courtesy of BetOnline, and they are your online sportsbook experts.
This episode is brought to you by Philips One by Sonicare. One up your brushing with Philips One. This one is the ideal one for those who are still using an old-school manual toothbrush. To all those people, it's time to take your brushing one level up. The solution is a simple one. It's the perfect timing one. It's the long-lasting battery-powered or USB rechargeable one. That comes in multiple colors to match you one. The one with a subscription that delivers new brush heads for just $5. Your teeth deserve this one. Philips One by Sonicare. One up your brushing. Learn more at philips.com/one. That's philips.com/ONE.
Are you guys ready for the NFL Draft? Join Locked On NFL Draft host Trevor. Let's try that again. 3, 2, and 1. Are you guys ready for the upcoming NFL Draft? Join Locked On NFL Draft host Trevor Sikkema and Benjamin Solak as they give you their latest positional rankings and analysis on all 2021 draft prospects. They have team-centric guest mocks coming up right around the corner. Follow the Locked On NFL Draft podcast on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, a couple of notes to pass along to our listeners in terms of other Utah athletics programs in action and some good results. Let's start off with the men's tennis program. You rarely see them play a double-header in terms of matches in a day, but they did it yesterday.
They did, and part of that was probably because they took a little break from Pac-12 play to knock out games against San Diego State and Montana State up at the Eccles Tennis Center, knocked out SDSU 5-2, knocked down those pesky Bobcats from Montana State 6-1. And overall, the men's tennis team has done I shouldn't say surprisingly well. What they've done is they've continued to really do well after playing a very, very short initial season in 2020, which was canceled obviously due to COVID. It's a program to watch, without a doubt. They're on the rise and definitely making moves.
Yeah, and they're going to be on the road later this week. They're going to be in Reno to face off against the University of Nevada at Reno, and they'll face off against UC Davis on Friday. So best of luck to the men's tennis program. Hopefully they can go 4-0 on the week. Be good to see. Also, let's talk for a minute about the University of Utah men's golf program. You and I are both salivating over the new facility that they announced, or they opened recently, not announced recently, they opened recently, but they actually had a fantastic showing up in Tacoma, Washington.
I just want to find out how I get my thumbprint so that I can get into that building and practice my putting, Jake, because it seems to be playing off for the golf program as they finished third at the Seattle U Red Hawk Invitational. It is the third straight top 3 finish for the team. That's an impressive step for this program and for a team that really does need to develop, because the Pac-12, again, laden with really good golf teams. I don't know if you've ever heard of Stanford. They play some golf there.
Arizona State does play some decent golf as well. Funny enough, a really good showing for Blake Tomlinson. 4 under par overall, placed in a tie for second among the overall field individually. So a fantastic showing for him individually. So good things, I think, for Coach Clegg and the rest of the University of Utah men's golf program. I'm with you, Brian. We got to find a way to scam our way into getting our thumbprints and be able to get into that facility. There's no doubt about that.
Shout out to the local boy, Blake Tomlinson, straight out of Skyline High School. My Highland High Ram heart supports your change of colors.
Well, there you go. All right, Brian, as we round out today's podcast, I wanted to talk about one major topic with regards to the Pac-12, and that is the Pac-12 commissioner search. And the topic kind of came up because Dennis Dodd put out a tweet recently that reads as follows. Quote, "These names have been mentioned, but we're quickly getting close to the end of the Pac-12 commissioner search." He mentions 3 names here: Gene Smith, who is Ohio State's athletic director, Dan Radakovich, who is Clemson's athletic director, and then Oliver Luck, former NCAA senior administrator, West Virginia athletic director, XFL commissioner, and then he adds the Pac-12 projected to have a replacement for Larry Scott by late April, and of course we're on March 31st, so in the next 3 to 4 weeks, according to Dennis Dodd, we could have a new commissioner in place for the Pac-12.
And it's perfect timing, I think, for this, Jake, because the Pac-12 is going to be coming off of what's looking like a very, very successful NCAA tournament. At the time of this recording, while y'all will be listening to this on Wednesday morning, and the USC had just been demolished by Gonzaga, but UCLA was still in the fight against Michigan, so we'll have to wait and see how that one finishes out tomorrow. But if that does end up with the Bruins going to a Final Four, that is massive for the Pac-12, and they need to take that momentum and immediately start pushing it forward to football season, because there are 8 teams in this conference that are returning, I think it's above 50% in terms of scholarship players or starters, according to our good friend Yogi Roth.
Yeah.
Goodness.
No, there's a good point there. And there's a chance that the Pac-12 could have a very good season in football, but it's all going to be dependent on these teams going out and winning games. You and I have both talked about this in the past. It's just, you know what cures all is winning. And that's obviously what's happened in the Pac-12 for the Pac-12 in the NCAA tournament. They were an afterthought going into the tournament. A lot of people thought they'd have just a bunch of one-and-dones and be out. And yes, there's a chance that UCLA could be Final Four bound, and how incredible would that be to be a play-in team and all of a sudden be in the final weekend of the NCAA men's basketball tournament. But you're right, they do need to push this momentum forward. And the good news is that amongst those 3 names that we have heard about, Gene Smith, Dan Radakovich, and Oliver Luck, I think any 3 of those names are big fish in terms of the college football and college sports sphere, and any 3 of them would be, I think, welcome leaders for the Pac-12.
Absolutely, and I think the biggest thing that fans may point out is what kind of experience do they have in negotiating TV contracts.
Sure.
That's not the priority right now. That more than likely is going to be something that you're going to hire a firm to work with anyway, someone that specializes in those kinds of things. You're not going to want your commissioner to focus strictly on the negotiations, right? You want them to be building relationships so that Jockey isn't the apparel sponsor for your conference. It's somebody worth having. And that's no insult to Jockey, but how bizarre is it to tune into the Pac-12 network and see the host wearing Jockey golf shirts?
It is a little bit strange because they had a long-running deal, if I'm not mistaken. They were with Adidas for a long time. Funny enough, I actually still have a jacket to this day it's a Pac-12 Networks jacket that was given to me when they did one of their spring football tour deals when they came to Utah, and I still wear it to this day. So yes, it is strange to see them wearing Jockey, but nonetheless, I'm looking forward to this. I think they need to get a good leader here to help spread the good word of the Pac-12, build on the momentum that the college basketball realm has, what's been generated from the NCAA tournament, and if they can do that, well, you could find a commissioner off to a really, really quick start no matter who it is.
Absolutely, and there's a ton of things that are happening around. I think Jed Fish down in Arizona has really generated some excitement around that program. Obviously, Herm Edwards has developed a very strong footprint and impression nationally with what he's done at Arizona State. I think Kyle Whittingham has Utah positioned to probably have their most legitimate shot at a Pac-12 championship next year, pending quarterback play and hopefully an opportunity for us to see how the team actually looks in the spring game. We'll see about that. But this is all stuff like this is a prime time to get a commissioner in here. And honestly, why are we even waiting to get Larry Scott out?
Good question. Can we just as soon as the new commissioner is, just, toss him right back, toss him right out on the street? I don't know. That'd just be my
Off thought. You go.
Yeah. Out you go. Do your thing. Go be a lecturer. Do something. I don't know what you're going to do, but be gone.
Go back to Harvard. Harvard.
Go back to Harvard. Anyways, but I think that's some good news in terms of the momentum building here towards finishing up this Pac-12 commissioner search. And, man, there are some big names being mentioned for it, and that should be exciting, I think, to anybody who's associated with the Pac-12, especially if you're a University of Utah fan, alum, whatever it might be. All right, Brian, well, that's going to do it for a Wednesday edition of the show. Any final thoughts from you on our way out the door here?
I don't know if you noticed, Jake, we started closing out the show with a new little catchphrase. It is be well, do well, stay well. Wishing everybody the best out there. Hoping that March finishes on a high note, especially the Utah Jazz. Holy cow.
Yeah, that a little bit crazy. You have a plane issue due to a flock of birds. Just a scary, scary deal, man.
Especially something like birds when they aren't even real, right?
Jeez, that's a good note to finish on. All right, that'll do it for us. A big thank you for joining us. Follow the show on social media at Locked On Utes on Twitter. Follow Brian's work at Brown Bear SLC. You can check out my work at Jacob C. Hatch, and feel free to email the show anytime, lockedonutes@gmail.com. That is the email address. We want you guys' questions. It's a hashtag Twitter Thursday tomorrow. If you guys got questions for us, please submit them now. We'll be happy to address them on tomorrow's podcast. Until then, have a great rest of your day. This has been the Locked On Utes podcast for March 31st, 2021, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow.